Good morning, everybody. This is Martin John, and we are here talking about the Tao Te Ching. The Tao Te Ching is an ancient text written about 600 BCE, presumably by a guy, Lao Tzu. Lao Tzu was, once again, presumably asked to write the Tao Te Ching by the preceptor, king, or, like mayor of the town when he started to tell everybody, I'm getting out of here. I don't like what you guys have been, I don't like the direction things are going. And so, when the precept was like, oh, you don't like what we're doing, but you're like the smartest guy and you know what's going on. And he was like, yeah, I do. And I'm getting out of here. They were like, hey, can you write up some things so that we could know about how to be? And presumably that's what happened. Like, I don't like to spend a lot of time on that kind of stuff, but that's how this text, that's the story of how this text was written. Once again, whether that's true or not is hard to say. However, it's nice to know. It's nice to kind of just get into that a little bit. But here, what I do is I ask you to come up, join me on stage, and then we'll have you pick a number. We'll meet a little bit. I'll ask you a little bit about what's going on in your life, and then I'll have you pick a number between 1 and 81, because there are 81 chapters in the Tao Te Ching. And so by picking a number, you will engage in some text from the Tao that will help you deal with either problems or situations or things that you're thinking about, which may come up in our conversation right off the bat. So we may just come off and say, hey, what's going on in your life? You might be like, oh, I'm going through a thing. You don't even have to tell me what that thing is. And the Tao will help open up the passage so that you can think about it in a different way, right? The Tao Te Ching helps us live a more reasonable life. And when I say live a reasonable life, I mean living a life in where we're not asking other things to change for us. I'm going to bring up Summer. Is that right? Summer? Hello? Summer Fiesel? Okay, this is John, and we are here on the Tao Te Ching, the Tao of the Day. So we're looking at the Tao. And Summer had joined me, but I don't know if she knows she has joined me, or she doesn't know what to do now. So I'm going to go ahead and drop you off just in case you did that accident. And if anybody wants to come up and join me to talk about the Tao Te Ching, I would love to have you. So I'm, I have the Tao open in front of me. And so number 20 just stood out to me. It said, stop learning. Stop learning is the title of 20. And this is what it says. Stop learning. It has not been helpful. There is no difference between yes and no, nor between good and evil. Most people would never know that. They define the manifestation as others have, and foolishly give up themselves in favor of that. Everyone else wants to be excited. I prefer the darkness. I prefer to not care. Like a fool, I have no direction. Everyone else has abundance, while I seem to have lost it all. Within me, there is still no striving. It appears I am in chaos. Ordinary men look bright and intelligent, while I alone seem dull and confused, aimless as if on the sea, drifting with nowhere to rest. I don't aspire to be like others. I am nourished by Tao. So, this is a problem with following Tao. This is the big problem with following Tao. What other people see you as, especially if they are following the manifestation so closely. When people want to be excited, they won't follow Tao. When people want to be praised, they won't follow Tao. When people want their ego stroked, they won't follow Tao. And it's important to understand that. It's important to understand what this means, like what it means when we get into this space of learning and learning from the outside of us. Summer is going to join me again. Summer Fiesel, are you with me? I'm going to give you a little bit more time to come up, but I will remove you after 30 seconds because like sometimes it's just an accident and we don't want to engage. So I'll go ahead and drop you off. But if you wanted to come back and have a conversation, I'm always open for you to coming back. So thank you so much for exploring the app. I know the app isn't always as intuitive, especially because you're live with somebody, and that's like, oh, how would they? that's crazy. But yeah, that's what we do. We have these little conversations, and so I'm grateful for. And maybe you're trying to follow me, and I know the follow and the join might be right next to each other. I'm not sure. So this one is entitled "Stop Learning," and as we read, there's this comparison. You know, everyone else wants to be excited. I prefer the darkness. And I do. You know, it's funny. Like the other day, I was sitting on my couch just looking out the window. And the person who's staying with me came home and was like, oh, hey, you know, like, and she just went about her business. And in my mind, later on that day, I was like, I wonder what that was like for her, you know, and I wonder if that was okay. I don't want to make her nervous that, you know, like I need quiet or something, because I don't, and what have you. I was just sitting looking out the window. And she was like, oh, no, it was fine. It was the same as somebody just looking at their phone, you know, like you're doing what you do. Someone looking at their phone is just doing what they do. And so this number 20 starts with stop learning. It has not been helpful. What is that? What does that to you mean? What is that? Like stop learning. It has not been helpful. How does that land for you? Think about it. What have you learned? You've learned that, you know, like when people say things, like, oh, you should do this, or you should do that, or you need to be like this, or you need to be like that, or you're an extrovert, or you're an introvert, or you're this, and this is what this does, and you have ADHD because you have, like, think about everywhere that we learn things today. We learn about what's a narcissist, and we learn about what ADHD is, and we learn about, like medications, and we learn about all of this stuff. Everywhere we look, we learn something, and it just gets us off track from who we are. And I think that's the point of it has not been helpful. Learning one thing, like, and this is really maybe comes under the guise of living under the influence, right? Everything you learn is an influence, and we live under that if we learn it. If we learn that this is good and this is bad and this is right and this is wrong and all of those things, we learn all of that stuff along the way. You know, I've talked to people on this show who have been through religion and have been through different sorts of groups and other things. And not that religion is bad, but every religion has something to teach you. And then you have something to learn when you get involved in any group. So even if you were a part of Toastmasters, where, you know, there is a strong line of don't use ums and uhs and does and all of that kind of stuff. And really, sometimes those are the perfect things to use to get somebody to hear you. So hard rules aren't necessarily going to always be the right one. And so stop learning. It hasn't been helpful. Trusting yourself in this moment without an ego, right? Trusting yourself without having to be right, trusting yourself to communicate, trusting yourself to be as you are, is probably, and that's what this is saying, is you trust Tao, you align with Tao, you align with the nature of the universe. And when you align with the nature of the universe, you will always do the right thing. Right? Stop your learning. It has not been helpful. There is no difference between yes and no, nor between good and evil. Right? When you get on the side of good, the side of evil thinks you're the evil one. When you get on the side of evil, the side of good thinks you're evil and whatever, you know. There is no difference. You know, like, yes, okay, things will be different for you if you define evil as gaining power. Things will be different for you because you are experiencing it from that perspective. Right? But so much of this is because we have learned. We have learned what good is. We have learned what evil is. We have learned what right is. We have learned what wrong is. What it says here, most people will never know that there is no difference between good and evil, and you may be in that category, right? You may not know. You may never know that there is no difference between good and evil. Because they define the manifestation as others have, and foolishly give up themselves in favor of that. Now we're starting to get somewhere. Now we're starting to get to a place where we can see ourselves. Right? Most people would never know that there's no difference between yes and no, nor between good and evil, because they define the manifestation as others have. How would they do that? Why would they do it? Because they learned. They learned how to do that. They learned how to do that from other people. So other people decided what's good, decided what's bad, and then all of a sudden start teaching that to everybody else. And when they teach it to someone else, you adopt these things. This is why I say it's important to understand that you're not being taught things. Because a lot of people want to run around and say, I was taught. No, you learned. You learned that. You learned this from your parents. You learned to have bad relationships from your parents. You learned to, you learned to be defensive in relationships because people cheated on you. You learned to whatever. And it's important that we take on the idea that you learned that. Because when you learn something, you can adjust what you learned. You can adjust it because you know you're faulty, right? You know you've made mistakes. So maybe this was a mistake and you can learn something new. If we're taught something through the lens of a professional, through the lens of someone who's right. You know, when our parents teach us, when they taught us, they were, the ideal. And so because they were the ideal, they can't be wrong, and it's harder for us to change our perspective. So it's important to recognize that everything that we're bringing in, we learned, and the Tao here is saying stop learning. Stop learning from these experiences that you've had. Stop learning from other people. Because most people would never know that they've even learned these things. Because their whole lives are defined through the eyes of others. And foolishly, they give up themselves in favor of that. So this is, at its core, what I mean by living under the influence. You foolishly give up yourself in favor of the influences that are around you, in favor of the ideas that your neighbors have, in favor of the ideas that your peers have, your parents have, your partners have, your bosses have, all of these people in your life. You're like, oh, they like this, I'm going to like this. I remember doing that with music. I was feigning liking music for years. And it wasn't until I was able to say, look, I just don't like these things. I feigned liking reading. I feigned liking music. I feigned liking food. I feigned liking all of these things. I don't care. In all reality, I don't care about architecture. I don't care about food. I don't care. And because I was under the influence, I was constantly going out of my way to prove that I liked things that I just couldn't find a way to tell people I don't care. And that was hard. And that's what we get as we move into the rest of this verse. Everyone else wants to be excited. I prefer the darkness. I prefer to not care. Like a fool, I have no direction. And that's hard. If you're not informed that things like the Tao exist, feeling like a fool is the reason I was constantly trying to like things I didn't like, or be seen as liking things that I didn't like. Because if I liked a thing, then I fit in. If I was excited about a thing, then I fit in. If I was upset about a thing, then I fit in. If I wasn't upset about it, I'd be challenged. I'd be challenged and I'd be called stupid because I didn't know, or people would, like say things. Or these are the fears that I had. And these are the things that I experienced, where people would say things about me because I didn't know anything. Oh, he doesn't know this esoteric band or this, it's like, oh no. And then I'd feel like, oh, I got to go out and I got to do all of this research and I got to do all of this stuff just so I could fit in, just so I could be a part of what everybody else is a part of. Like a fool, I have no direction. And that's how it felt. It was like, oh, I don't like music. I don't like food. I don't have a thing to anchor myself to. And that was such a hard lesson that it's okay. And not only is it okay, I have to really back not caring for many years before I understand any value of it. Because you can't just dip into it, because it's such a mind fuck, right? Like you have to embody yourself, because we are all so under the influence of our extremities, the things that are outside of us, our parents, our friends, our peers, our jobs, our identities. All of these things are telling us in the manifestation, there is so much good for you. All you have to do is engage it. All you have to do is care. All you have to do is be excited by it and move towards it. Like, oh, you don't like this, you don't like that, you don't like, you don't like anything. I remember one time, now I'm recovering alcoholic, drug abuser, as well as gambler, and there are other things in there as well. But I remember one time I was sitting with friends and we were like, hey, what do you want to do tonight? We were figuring things out. And someone mentioned going to the casino. And when they mentioned going to the casino, I lit right the fuck up. And I was like, yes, let's go to the casino. We'll do this and we'll do this and we can do this and I can show you guys this and da, 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 da. And my friend, knowing that I had a gambling problem, said, no. We're not going to the casino if you're like this. Like, you turned into a different person as soon as we started talking about gambling. You turned into a different person as soon as we started talking about going to the casino. And I was glad that we didn't go. But that's the thing. That person that is excited about going gambling, that's a different person than the person that I was and that she knew me to be. And this was years and years ago. This was still in the beginning of my not gambling and not using and stuff. And so, but she didn't know me as an addict. She knew me as a calmer person, not the calm person that I am today, but she recognized that I altered, my whole being changed. And that was still maybe only 2 or 3 years into recovery. So it's so important to give yourself space to be and to allow yourself to get into that place of not caring, get into that place of being okay with being different from everybody else. So many people are here for the excitement, here for the manifestation, here for the here for social media, here for like food, drugs, alcohol. Like they want you to engage in these things, and it's so difficult. It's so important to be able to be yourself, and yet being yourself is something that is not necessarily supported everywhere. And that's why this is saying, stop learning what other people want. There's no difference between yes and no. What is your life giving you right now? Inman, I appreciate that, and I look forward. Inman's going to join me next time there's an opportunity, but can't do it today. And thank you for the congratulations. So this is what this is saying, right? So stop learning. It has not been helpful. You've learned from everywhere, and all it's helped you to do is get further away from yourself. Oh, maybe Inman can join me today.
Hello.
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 Yeah, can you hear me?
How are you?
Can you hear me?
Can you hear me?
Yes, sir, I can.
Okay, good.
All right. Good morning, man. I
Good morning.
appreciate the conversation, man. You dropping some jewels on the people, man, and I appreciate it for real, for real.
Okay, well, thank you.
I'm currently incarcerated, man. You feel me? I've been in prison since I was 16 years old, and
In what state?
California.
California. Okay. Yeah. I gotcha.
I went to jail, man, for being connected to the murder of a young man. I was 17 years old. I was 16 at the time.
Yeah.
And from the moment that it happened, I knew that it was wrong from my point of view. And so I chose to change myself, and I chose to grow and to learn and to educate myself. And because of that, I became a completely different person. However, while in here, I've ran into some people, man, that have studied Buddhism and a lot of that type of stuff. And I remember one conversation where somebody was telling me that evil didn't exist and that good didn't exist, bad didn't exist, and I couldn't really comprehend it. I couldn't wrap my head around it, right? Because I'm like, what do you mean bad doesn't exist, or like good doesn't exist? Like there's good sensations, there's bad sensations, right? There's pain.
No, there's not. But go on.
Right? That's what I thought, though, right?
Right.
So I'm like, damn, like how do you break that down to somebody that doesn't understand it, right? And I know, like, at the core of it, sensation is sensation, right?
Right.
Right.
That's manifestation, right? In terms of what we're speaking here in this idea of stop learning, number 20, that's manifestation, right? Most people would never know about what you're talking about because they define they define the world as others have, right? Like you learned how to define good and bad sensations by having experiences that other people defined before you.
Yeah. But I mean, like, even as a child, right? Like, if you feel pain, you cry, or you 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 show that you're in some form of discomfort,
Well,
right?
there's also learned behavior in that,
That's
right?
true.
So if you are crying, you may be crying because you're looking for a response from somebody else that you learned.
Well, I mean, do you think that it's possible for that to be, how can I say it?
Like a natural response? Yes, crying is a
Yeah,
natural response. There is a natural response to
pain,
crying,
right?
but it isn't,
Because we do
it,
agree that pain is a thing, right?
no, I've had experiences in which I've had pain and I have, been shown, now this is also coming from outside of me, how to, redefine that pain, because pain and pleasure are very similar.
Yes, sir.
So no, I wouldn't necessarily say pain exists.
So
Neither would I
what would you
say
classify it as?
you
Pain?
don't classify it. That's the
Oh,
point,
okay.
right? Once you want to classify it, then you start identifying with it. You start saying, this is something.
Put it in a box.
Right. Now I put it in a box and then I have to experience that box. And there's a Tao which says, self-referential, those who name themselves, which is what you're talking about. You're saying, okay, once you name something outside of yourself, you're then identifying yourself.
Yeah.
Right? So once you name something, so you say there's pain. And now we have to use language, right? So let's not be foolish. Like we have to use language. Pain. Okay, we're going to use this word to mean a thing, right? And that's totally in the manifestation. Now, as we are out here, when you separate yourself out from everybody else in the world, let's say you're just in a dark room somewhere, and you experience pain. And you have nobody else, and you have nothing, no one to tell, no one to associate, no one to help. Are you experiencing pain, or are you having an experience that you now have to deal with? Whether or not you want to define it as pain, that's an experience that you have to deal with. No matter what, that's what life is. Just like, this is happening and I'm going to have to deal with it. Whether or not I have to just close my eyes and breathe through the pain or change positions or do whatever, I'm going to do something that I need to do to deal with this because there ain't nobody else here to help me.
Yes, sir.
You're incarcerated, and the incarceration that you're experiencing because of laws and rules and other things like that. And some of the lessons that you're going to learn are part of that. So you could say, this is horrible, or this is the experience I'm having. What am I going to do with this? Like I have a diagnosis of MS, and I was bedridden for a month and all of these other things. And it's like, I could be a victim of that, or I could just have that experience.
That part. Now I chose not to be a victim.
I hear that. Yeah. And that doesn't mean you're done not being a victim, because you're still going to, you're going to continue to find places in your life where, you are you're the victim of the definition of pain, possibly, right? Oh, well, I'm experiencing pain. Well, you're having an experience now and so it gets really sort of soupy at some point, right? It's like you're kind of swimming in all of this stuff, and it's like the fish, the water's really wet today. Well, what's water? You're just living in it. It's just your thoughts, and you're swimming in it. What I do, I don't know. Have you heard this show before?
No, all right. So like, I'm a mentor on here, or at least I used to be when this was called Wisdom.
Wisdom. Yeah, yeah.
I have a podcast called Hard Lessons, and they heard me
Mm-hmm,
on
mm-hmm.
there, so they made me a mentor on here.
Wonderful.
And I haven't been able to get on for the last few years, so
Yeah.
I'm just tapping back
Well,
in.
welcome back.
You're the first person that I'm joining today.
Yeah. Well, I'm grateful for that. I was around early days of Wisdom and stuff as well, so we've probably crossed paths before.
We probably have, man, and I appreciate the good vibes, you know. All right, so like, there was a point in my life, right, where I got denied parole at board. It was in 2021. They
Yeah.
denied me for 7 years. Told
Okay.
me that I lacked insight, and some more stuff, but it wasn't the denial of my release that affected me the most. It was the fact that they dehumanized me, right? They tried to debase me. I told them that I was empathetic, compassionate, that I had plans to help the people and stuff. And they were like, yeah, no, you don't. Yeah, no, you're not. Right? And I'm like, wait, what? I just told you who I am. And now you're telling me that I'm not this person. And it put me in an internal conflict. And after they denied me, I ended up going through a mental depression
Mm-hmm.
and having a mental breakdown,
Mm-hmm.
you know, and crying on the phone to my mom and
Mm-hmm.
breaking up with my girlfriend via text messages, right? Because she was mistreating me at the time from my definition, or from my perspective, right? Now, at that point, I needed a way to decompress. So I chose to start writing a poem book called Open Heart Surgery, where I literally cut my heart the fuck open and poured my heart out to the world. Um, I haven't released the book yet, but I'm still working on releasing it. Now, during this process, though, I end up finding an equilibrium. Like, I end up finding a peace, um, and like kind of finding my center, you know? And I look at that experience and I connect it to what you're talking about today, you know?
Mm-hmm.
And you can say that, well, a person can say that mental breakdown was a bad thing, but no, it wasn't. It was something that I had to go through, in order to get out and come out on the other side, right?
Mm-hmm.
And now that I've came out on the other side, I believe I'm stronger. I just finished 30 books now, right?
Good.
So
Yeah. Yeah. And so, well, let me ask you to pick a number between 1 and 81.
81.
Number 81. Okay. We're going to read number 81. And we're going to use this as sort of an anchor to move our conversation. And I hope, and I know you're in a situation, but I hope when you get cut off in 4 minutes or whatever, you can come back and we can continue to talk about this. So 81 is entitled Blossoming Leader. And this is about how to communicate from our heart, really. And that's really what you're talking about. And that's why I ask people, that's what we do here on this program, is I have you sort of find a baseline. And your baseline is definitely within the story that you just told. And then I ask you to pick a number, because in all of our hearts exists the Tao somewhere. And everything is aligned with us so that everything can continue to help us grow. So this is number 81, Blossoming Leader. True words may not sound comforting, yet comfort those they are meant for. However, comforting words are never true. Connected to Source, there is no desire to prove. Desire to prove only exposes separation from Source. The Master's possessions are not part of the manifestation. Giving away her possessions, she only receives more. Tao blesses everyone in this way. When this blessing can be received, domination and power will yield, while all people will blossom as leaders. What are your thoughts?
It's beautiful, powerful.
What stood out to you? What words or phrase or whatever?
all of it, but let me see. Can you read it one more time, please?
Mm-hmm. True words may not sound comforting, yet comfort those they are meant for. However, comforting words are never true. Connected to source, there's no desire to prove. Desire to prove only exposes separation from source. The master's possessions are part of the manifestation. Giving away her possessions, she only receives more. Tao blesses everyone in this way. When this blessing can be received, domination and power will yield, while all people will blossom as leaders.
All right, it makes me think about a blissful moment, like when you reach like enlightenment, or you reach a moment where you're feeling like an awe-inspiring like grace upon you, or like it's how can I say it? It's beyond explanation, right? It's something that you have to feel and you have to experience. And the moment that you open your mouth and you try to explain it, it loses something, right? So when you're saying comforting words, so when you speak the truth, just to speak the truth, it comforts a person because it's the truth, and the truth is going to resonate with people because we all realize the truth, because the truth is universal, right? However, when you're going out of your way just to try to comfort someone, that's not necessarily coming from a true place. That's coming from a place of, it's like a knee-jerk reaction. Oh, you look sad. Oh, why are you sad? Hi.
Let me say something that makes you feel better, right?
Yeah, exactly.
And
Right?
then those things are not true, but we made them feel better. Now they're going out in the world possibly believing what you said was true when it's not, and they're fooling themselves into believing it's true. Like, oh, you're such a good guy, but it's like, no, you're not a good guy.
And
But
what
you
if that
were told you
compounds?
were a good guy because you were feeling bad.
Exactly.
So that's, yeah, that's where we begin, right? So true words may not sound comforting. So if you're saying something true and someone overhears you, you may not, the person who overhears you may not think that those are comforting words, yet comfort those they are meant for. So the person that you're speaking to, when you're being truthful to somebody, I remember I did this podcast, Recover Yourself, years ago, and the first person that I spoke to, the first person that I interviewed for that, was coming out of, the system, coming out of being incarcerated in Ohio. And Ohio's tough because there's a lot of for-profit prisons out there, and he was in that, he was in that system, and so there's not a whole lot of people. And I don't know where California. I know California was bad for a while. I don't know if it still is in terms of for-profit. Yeah,
It's working on it though.
yeah. So I know that there had been changes. This is like I didn't, I haven't been engaged in the prison systems and stuff, like in my recovery work and whatnot, for over 10 years. So I don't know where California is, but for-profit prisons obviously are horrible. And when you get in front of a board, like you were talking about, right? Like, we have to recognize that the board is saying something and you are experiencing something. Right? You're experiencing a very specific thing. And what we're talking about your board review, what happened was you had an experience. Now you embodied that experience and you said, this experience is out here. It was just an experience, right? You had pain and you could identify as the victim of that. You could. I'm not saying you did or whatever. I mean, it sounded like you did to some degree, especially with what they were saying. And that doesn't matter. You know the movie Matrix, I'm assuming?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. So like when the Oracle told Neo like what he needed to hear. It wasn't true, but it was what he needed to hear.
Yes, sir.
So
how do
it
you
was.
feel about that? Like,
What's that?
so how do you feel about that? Like, how do you feel about like when someone does that? Like, if they're telling you exactly what you need
first
to
off,
hear.
that's an oracle. So we're gonna like that's imaginary. But because you and the board don't have insight into why this is being done, but Tao does. Tao has insight, and it doesn't care. It doesn't care if you feel bad about having to hear what you need to hear to find the truth. It doesn't care if you feel pain, because pain doesn't exist to Tao. It doesn't care if you get depressed, because all of those things, like, once again, we were talking about the idea that none of these things exist, right? And they're just identified within us. So you identified your depression and you had depression. That's good. That's good for you. Like, because you did it. Now you are under the influence of your parents, and you're under the influence of the law system. I can't even think. Yeah. You're under the influence of the prison. You're under the influence of the board. You're under the influence, and you are not free, right? You're not free to think that you can choose your own life, but you're already on a path. What's that?
What's sad is actually I actually found mental freedom first.
Yes.
This was after I've been in prison for 15 years.
Yeah.
I was in a box or in a cave, and I chose to dive into myself and reflect on life and on universal law.
Yeah.
And spirituality. So when I went into board, I was spiritually grounded.
Yeah.
And I sat there, and then they chose to dehumanize
They
me.
chose. Well, yeah.
It was a stark realization for me that
you were
this
still
is the Matrix.
Yeah.
I was terrified.
I
was heartbroken.
I cannot imagine what because you had done work, and they may very well have just been hungry.
Yes, sir.
Yeah. You know,
And
they are human. They are not right. And that's the thing. We look at parents that way when we're children, and we live under their influence. Now, you are looking for approval from someone outside of you. And you're doing that because you want to get out and you want to live your life, and you actually have to prove. And here is the next line. Connected to source, there is no desire to prove. Desire to prove only exposes separation from source.
We're all connected. You don't have to prove what is already known or what's already true. It'll prove itself.
Right. And so, but you're in a position in which you're being told explicitly, you have to prove this to me.
Yeah.
Now, if you go out of your way to prove it to somebody, you're going to look like you're trying to prove it to somebody, and they're going to see it from a certain perspective.
Yeah.
But if you walk in, and you mentioned this word, and I mean, I don't like to use this word, enlightenment, right? You mentioned being enlightened, if you walked in enlightened and sat down and just received, are they going to be able to experience it differently? Because you're walking in knowing that they can say yes or no. So you're not walking in with no expectation. You're not walking in thinking anything other than like, they have to believe me. And in a prison system, it's going to be hard to separate yourself from they have to believe me to I have to make sure that they believe me.
Yeah.
Especially because your freedom is on the line.
Yeah.
So connected to source, there's no desire to prove at all.
Yeah.
Even in the situation that you find yourself.
Yeah,
And I
see,
know
that
that's
was
like, again, when I say this, it's like, I feel a little sort of like, look, I haven't done any serious time. Like, I know that you're in a situation that I don't know about, but I have to be able to, like, and there's always this trepidation. It's just like, I don't want to say anything stupid because, like, I know you're not in control. However,
insight
you
is
are in
insight.
control of so much inside of you.
That part, and
Yeah,
we are all in control of our own
absolutely.
universe.
Have you ever read Viktor Frankl?
Yeah, hell yeah.
Yeah.
Man
So
Search for
that's
Meaning.
yeah, man search for meaning. So that's like when I hear about your situation, like, all I can think about is Viktor Frankl, and like,
Beautiful book.
it's and what it says here is the master's possessions are not part of the manifestation. In the manifestation, you're imprisoned. In the manifestation, you have a board to pass. In a manifestation, you have guards around you. In the manifestation, you're in a cage. In the manifestation, all of these are there. However, all of your possessions are within you. Giving away her possessions, she only receives more. You only receive more because your possessions are your soul, your love, your understanding, your ability to be present, your ability to be calm, your ability, and I'm sure that you've recognized that when people engage with you, they up their game.
Yes, sir.
And that's not because of you. And that's because that which is within you is being loved by you. When you love yourself, other people recognize that because you're actually loving them because they are part of you.
Exactly.
And when they feel that, when they see that, they're like, I can up my game. I can love myself just as much as he can. And they want to be better. And you're inspiring people to be better. But it's not you. It is that which is within you. It is your possession. It is your life. It says life is a gift received from Tao. And so this is you appreciating the gift of your life, not taking credit, being, allowing yourself to be. And that means that you get to be the light that you are, and those around you up their game simply because they see the light and they know it's within them as well.
Beautifully put. That's all I'm here for, man. To shine my light.
That's right. And to help people recognize that it's within them too. And that's where we end in this number 81. Tao blesses everyone in this way. Then there's the caveat. When this blessing can be received, it isn't just given to you, right? Tao blesses everyone in this way. And all of the hard motherfuckers around you that soften after they interact with you means that they're wanting to receive. But there are people who are going to double down their hardness around you because they're still afraid of what it is they're seeing.
And I watch that all the time.
Yeah.
And like I
and that's why
it now. I move with the creator or with the universe.
Right.
I let the spirit guide me, and I fully trust it. And I don't go against it anymore or anything, And
right.
to the point
there's nothing to prove.
No,
all of those motherfuckers just trying to prove shit.
Yeah, I don't got nothing to prove, dude. I've already reached my peak, and like I'm good. I'm good there. I know myself, and I'm good.
And that's a big, when this blessing can be received. There's a caveat there. Because if you can't receive this blessing, you won't get to this place. And then it says, when this blessing can be received, domination and power will yield. You won't try and overpower people. You won't try and dominate people. And that's what happens so often in situations in which you find yourself, whether that's a job or in prison or in society or in your neighborhood or in your gang or wherever you are, people are trying to one up and be better than, dominate, overpower. And when that yields, all people blossom as leaders. All people can see that they have a role here, and that their role is just as important as everybody else's.
That part. So I fully agree. Fully agree. Yeah, you're a wise man, man. You know, I'm happy I tapped in today, man.
Well, I'm glad you did as well.
And I know it all. It's all meant, man. You know, it's all by design.
Yeah.
You know? So I was meant to talk to you today.
Well, I'm glad you did.
Log on here, listen to you, and hear your words. Now, before we get off, because this is probably going to be my last time joining. Can you just reiterate, what is thou?
You've mentioned it a number of times. It is the underlying structure of the universe.
Oh, yes, sir.
Mm-hmm. It is that which is within everything. Now, we could call it God, but universal law. So we look at this idea of Tao, and God is born from Tao. So Tao is the void of all things, and it is the void within our bodies. It's the void within all manifestation, that which is like in between each cell. It is that which is inside of everything. It is the consciousness of all things. It is the one objective thing. And we all have these individual subjective experiences of our lives that guide us to that oneness. And we are, our lives are a gift of Tao. And my life is my gift of Tao, and you are part of that gift. And your life is a gift of Tao, and I am a part of that gift, right? And so we play both roles. We play the role of being the receiver of the gift, and we play the role of, a bit player to help you see yourself. You get to look at me. To help me see myself, I get to look at you.
It's beautiful. That's beautiful. Yeah. Man, I can't wait till the next time I'm able to tap in with you, man. I really enjoyed today's conversation, and I appreciate you shining your light, man.
Thank you so much. I love you, man. And
both you and the people. I love you too, man. The depths of my being.
Yeah, and I wish you all the luck in what you have in front of you.
Thank you. Shalom.
My best, man. Thank you so much. It's so wonderful. And, I want everybody to recognize that there is no difference, right? We all are here. And yes, we could all play a victim to one thing or another, from one day to the next. But when you, and these two verses, especially from where we're looking at now, right? From prison, from this, incarceration story and all of these, right? Like, it's so important to go back to 20 now, right? Stop your learning. It hasn't been helpful. There is no difference between yes or no, no difference between good and evil. Most people would never know that, right? There's that other caveat, right? Most people would never know that. They define the manifestation as others have and foolishly give up themselves in favor of that. You give up yourself because you have been told this is good, or this is bad, or this is right, or this is bad, or this is evil, or whatever, all of those things. You are told those things. You define the world as others have. And foolishly, you give up your strength. You give up all your power. You give up all that you are in favor of the definitions you've picked up along the way. Everyone else wants to be excited. I prefer the darkness. I prefer not to care. And we were just hearing about Inman, like, going through, and being, I don't know if he literally was in the hole, but he was in the hole. He was in the dark, and he found himself in that, right? I prefer the darkness. I prefer to not care. And when he went to the board, he cared. Obviously he cared and he wanted a certain expectation. He had an expectation. He had an outcome that he wanted. And when he goes to the board next time, he may be more in a state of not caring what happens, because he'll trust that whatever Tao is going to give him, it's going to be the right thing. It's going to be the thing that he needs to grow. And he may get it. And I'm hoping that he does. But I know no matter what he receives from that next board meeting, and it's not a board meeting, right? It's like literally like it's a bond meeting, and that's tough. But when he goes in without caring, when he goes in just knowing that like it's not in his hands, so he can't have a preference. Like that's when he's going to surrender to the Tao. Not submit. He's not going to submit to the board. But he surrenders to the fact that he doesn't have control over. Everyone else has abundance while I seem to have lost it all. When he goes into that meeting and says like, yeah, whatever you guys want, I'm good. Like, it will appear from the outside that he doesn't care. It'll appear from the outside that it's not like that he's cold, he's dark, he doesn't have like, are you depressed? No, I'm good. But it's hard to prove that, right? Because when you're in that state, there's nowhere, like you have nothing to prove. When you're truly in a state of like, I have surrendered to the life that I'm living. And it's not going to be the same. And it's going to surprise me. And it's going to be here for me. And I am going to step into it. It can appear that you're in chaos. Within me, there is still no striving. No striving to be anything. No striving to do anything. And everyone else around you is striving. They're like, wait, you must be crazy because you have to strive. I went out to dinner with my sister last night and her fiance, and they're both working really hard. And I'm like, yeah, my life is easy. I don't know. Like, I don't know if they're cool with that or if it brings them anxiety. And I don't care. Like, I'm just like, yeah, my life is easy. I don't know. I'm good. Ordinary men look bright and intelligent while I alone seem dull and confused, aimless as if on the sea, drifting with nowhere to rest. I don't aspire to be like others. I am nourished by Tao. Thank you so much for joining me today. I hope you guys enjoyed today. It was really nice to have Inman come with me and choose 81. And it was great to go through number 20 with you. I appreciate you guys so much, and hope I get to talk to each and every one of you that are listening. And I really enjoy connecting with people and connecting people to Tao. Tao is such a wonderful anchor for like just seeing the world from a new perspective. Thank you so much for joining me. If you're interested in the text that I read, you can pick up a copy of my Tao on my website. You can find that in my profile. You can also set up a Tao reading where I do readings through Satnam Yoga Chicago. You can find that in my links as well. And it's an hour conversation where we'll talk about what's going on in your life, and then I'll ask you to pick a number and we'll break it down and how you can incorporate it into your life. So it's very much like an oracle reading. And I also do Recover Yourself work, which is work all about dropping the influences that we've picked up along the way. Thank you so much for joining me, and until next time, keep recovering yourself.